Welcome with the raspy voice. It's John Gilman, aka Racket Club, aka the founder of the Racket House. This is episode 12 of the Racket House podcast, where we discuss all things music and success in our fun corner of the world, helping to inspire, inform, educate, motivate, and keep hope alive for musicians, creatives, entrepreneurs, and anyone else who wants to grow their brand in the music or creative spaces. Today, I'm honored to be joined by the Jesse Cannon, a multifaceted force in the music industry and founder of Musformation, one of my favorite YouTube channels for deep insights on music marketing. And he couples that with his music marketing trends newsletter that I also subscribe to. But he's been in it for decades, working in nearly every aspect of the music business. And he's a lot of success in podcasting as well. So most notably, he's made records with groups like The Cure, Animal Collective, The Misfits, one of my favorites, Limp Bizkit, The Menzingers, Man Overboard, Basement, Transit, Penelope Scott, Somos, Leftover Crack, Brand New, NoFX, and over 1,000 more. Also known for writing two of the top-rated music books on Amazon, Get More Fans, The DIY Guide to the New Music Business, which details how bands effectively promote their music, and Processing Creativity, the tools, practices, and habits used to make music you're happy with. So you got the business side, you got the creative side, two books that you should definitely read. And he presently produces hit podcasts like Fast Politics, The New Abnormal, as well as hosting a popular YouTube channel. Like I said, Musformation. I can't, don't mind me.
It was the name I tried to copyright, but it was already taken. So.
My brain wants to have that I in there, and it just can't. Yeah. I'll just wrap it up. I'll just wrap it up by saying he also consults on creative and marketing campaigns with some of the most innovative musicians today. I was very pleasantly surprised by Jesse saying yes to be here with us today, despite his busy schedule and all the things he has going on. I shot my shot, which is a common theme in the work that I do and advise musicians and creatives on. So please welcome to episode 12 of the Racket House podcast, Jesse Cannon.
Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, shooting your shot is very important. I mean, I always tell the story. It's like, we've gotten some insane interviews on the podcast by just asking, getting to interview like a sitting vice president, things like that. Like that happens because you shoot your shot.
Yeah. It's vastly important. I think you probably work with some bigger names than I do at this point, but a lot of my focus is working with, independent artists, up and coming musicians. Some are full-time, some are hobbyists that want to turn it into a career. Some are, just getting started. So there's really a pretty broad spectrum of the folks I work with. And a common theme is go out and get what you want, ask for what you want. You might get shut down, but at least you're making the ask. And at some point the no's will turn into yeses. And even like right before this podcast, a festival that I've played before, I wanted to get back on the lineup for, and I know there's a new person who does bookings. And I was like, hey, like last year didn't work out. Can I get back on your radar? What's your process? What's your timeline? And this was a couple weeks ago. And today, literally right before we spoke, 15 minutes, the guy's like, oh yeah, I'll be sending you an offer by the end of the month. I was like, okay, let's go. So
hell yeah.
Yeah, it's the sales guy in me, but anyway.
A lot of people don't realize that the batting average for this stuff, people get real disappointed. We're like, oh, I got shut down twice. I can't keep asking this and going through this. It's like the batting average is often real bad. And just like in baseball, I don't know much about baseball, but you hit 1 out of 20 as a home run. I know that you're one of the best alive at that point. So it's like, it's the same thing that a lot of time, like if you're asking for playlist placements, asking for features, it's the same thing.
Yeah. One of the artists I work with got an editorial placement on one of his new tracks. And to my knowledge, I'm not sure that he has before. If he has, it's been a long time. And you got to keep, and you read on these Reddit forums, you talk to music industry people. It's like, just keep pitching, mm-hmm. And both in the baseball analogy, translates over in that sense. But you're a big numbers guy, and we'll get into that, right? Like, the consistency around how you market yourself, how you promote yourself, what you're doing on social media, it's all numbers. I
100%.
generally, for those who don't know my guests, like to start with like just a little backstory on how you
Mhm.
got to where you are today. And, you know, you have a very public bio and a lot of information
Yeah.
out there, but just to kind of summarize, like, how did you get into music? How did you get to this stature that you are today? Like, what fueled it, and you know, what kind of paths did you take?
So I was in a band. We were a really bad punk rock band. I'd go to recording studios in New York, and all of them were run by like 80s hair metal guys, and they'd like turn up the reverb all loud and make the guitar sound terrible. I'd be like, no, that's not what we're looking for. And then when my records would sound good, people would be like, could you go in and tell the 80s hair metal guy not to do that to my record too? And I'm like, that's what a producer is. Hell yeah. So then I learned how to engineer. And then I was in bands. And then by the time I was 18, I was working at a club that had a lot of three clubs that had a lot of touring bands coming through that would be really popular. I worked at WFMU, which is the largest freeform radio station in America still to this day. They recruited me at 17 to work for free, I should say. And I would record humongous bands there. And I kind of kept doing that. And I just kept leveling up with like the groups I'd work with. And then after a while, it was like, oh, this group came all the way out here from Arizona to record with me. Like, this is crazy. And it just kept getting crazier and crazier. I eventually along the way started working for Alan Douches at West Side Music. Alan is the most credited engineer in music history. He has his name on more records than anybody. He's just a wild discography if you look him up. Then I started to work for Steve Evans, who's an amazing producer, and then Ross Robinson, who a lot of people know as who discovered Korn, Slipknot, Limp Bizkit, did At the Drive-In, Blood Brothers, Glassjaw, all these crazy, crazy records, Deftones. And then I came back and I was producing for a while. And somewhere along the way, I get really bored doing one thing, which is why my biography sounds really crazy. And I always would be like being a concert promoter or being a publicist too. And people would be like, how do you do this? You're producing 14 hours a day. And it's just like, I just do a million things at all times, no matter what I do. I like keeping myself busy.
Yeah.
So at some point, I got tired of bands saying to me, how do I get this record we're making heard? Because I'd be working with lots of really good groups. I kind of became known as like the guy who you could go to and would help you find your sound on your first or second record and like level it up a lot. I did a lot of techniques to learn how to do that.
Right.
And
what time period is this roughly?
So we're going the period of producing lots of groups and that I stopped working for Ross and Steve around 2005 and doing my own thing. Then around 2009, I'm really doing a lot of records that like, if you looked at my discography at the time and then you'd look at where they are 3 records later, it's like, oh, now this group's playing 2,000 seat venues. I took them from 200 seats to that with the record I did. And a lot of that was what I still do this day is I figure out what's unique and authentic about a group. And then I work expanding that in both the sound and in the image and in how we message a group. It's a lot different because the rules are different these days, but it's the same thing I've been doing for 16, 17 years.
Right.
But what would happen a lot of times is I'd be sitting in the studio with the band over those years. And this started in about 2003 is the band would go, what if we tried this for our record? And the record label would go, there's no way you fucking morons thought of that. Who told you to do that? And they'd go, Jesse did. And some of the people would start to notice the pattern, like maybe we should call Jesse when we're doing records. And so then I started to do more of that, get more confident. So I started this blog called Musformation, where instead of telling people, I'd get the same questions. Who do we upload to? Who do we do these things? I'm like, I'm tired of writing this email. I'm just going to put it up publicly. So I would just write a lot of blog posts on how you do it. And about that time, I started managing 2 bands, one called Man Overboard and one called Transit. Both of them really blew up really big on our own without getting in bed with like a long-standing recording contract. Like, yes, we put out some stuff on some labels, but we did not like sign like locked in recording contracts. So then we got in a massive bidding war for both bands. My lawyer at the time, who'd been doing it for almost 30 years, said that we got the best recording contract he had ever seen, because I used the philosophy of he who has the least to lose wins. And I would just keep saying no to some of them 9 times. And negotiated them really, really good deals with incentives that would make it so the label would fight for them. And I eventually had to stop managing them for me being a busy record producer and them needing a more full-time manager. And at some point in there, I fucking hate managing bands. And I decided that doing a less committal thing with all the requests I was getting would be a lot better for me. So that's kind of where my YouTube came from, which was like, all right, I'll spread these ideas around just like I did last time, and I'll see who comes to me. And now I am very lucky that a lot of my favorite artists and brands have written me and been like, so can we like meet regularly and we'll give you some money and we'll talk about what we do? And I'm like, yes, that sounds great to me. And I get to work with a lot of artists I really, really like on a pretty regular basis.
That's incredible. It all happened organic, and it sounds like your key side door tactic, or front door or back door, whatever, you got in the studio because you learned how to mix and engineer, right? And was that all like self-taught, or how did you learn those skills?
You couldn't really self-teach back then. So this is the mid 90s going into the 2000s, is like what I would call like my, I mean, you're always learning, but my real learning period. You could read some books, but you know, there's no YouTube, there was no Google. And so what you would do a lot is you would just sit in the room. And I luckily got to work in studios with really great people and great musicians. You know, there'd be times that I'd be at WFMU, for example, recording like the best jazz musicians in all of New York City, and they'd come in, they'd hear the rough mix I made, they'd be like, kid, this sounds like shit. And then the saxophonist who knew how to record them would be like, yeah, you listen to punk records, like this is how a jazz record sounds. You change the EQ, change the gain structure, and I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds a lot better. And then I would learn, like, this is how you do that. Then like I'd get a band like Spoon in, one of my favorite bands of all time, and I'd just put up the faders. I'd go, this sounds fantastic. And then the drummer would be like, let me move the mic like this. I'd be like, oh, I've never tried that. And then I learned that thing. So
it sounds similar to the legend Jimmy Iovine's story, right? Like, I love that documentary with him and Dre, and you know, he was just called in on Thanksgiving or something in New York City, and then they needed like an emergency producer or mixing engineer, and the rest is history. So, I mean, that's
a lot of people's trajectory is that you just said yes at the right time. And it's been a lot of my things too, is just like, I do like truly like with my podcasting company, like a lot of it was I skipped this part of my biography, but I eventually got called into work at Atlantic Records for a couple of years.
Cool.
And they let me go around the pandemic because they decided no one was going to listen to podcasts in the pandemic, so they shut down the podcast department, which seemed to be a usual major label move of real genius shit. But then I started another podcast called The New Abnormal, and we quickly literally hit #1 in our first few weeks on all of iTunes and beat out everybody, and we became one of the most popular podcasts throughout the 2020 election. It was a very political podcast, and it was cool.
What do you think has been driving your success in the podcasting world? Is it, you know, because you have this, before you answer, sorry, but you have this, you know, you like to take a unique approach with bands, with their with you know, drawing out their sound, or what, you know, makes them unique. You've had a lot of success in this corner of the world in music and you know, marketing success. politics and podcasting, like, what would you say your keys to success are?
I had a really funny thing just in the last 24 hours that explains this really well. So let's call it the biggest podcast in a space that I'm dealing with. One of the hosts asked them, what do you think we should be doing different to grow this thing we're growing, which I should say we've been growing it for about 2 weeks.
Mm.
And it's going, we got told we needed to hit a number in a month and we hit it in 3 days.
Wow.
And some of that is, I've been doing YouTube for 5 years. I know how to do YouTube no matter what it is. I can do it. But but she asked anyway, and the guy basically told us imitate him. And my philosophy is always, you should not imitate, you should make your own position. So what I try to do is I don't go into anything unless I know exactly what the competition is and what people who are going to mistake me for it is. And then I find what's authentic about it and draw a vast distinction. So, for example, I will use totally different colors than another podcast uses. If that podcast is, let's say, an all black background, there's no way I will ever use an all black background. I will use a green screen fish tank before I use that because that will be better. I want it to be recognizable. And I know one of the main things, and this works for musicians, podcasts, anything at all, is that what you need to be able to do in this era, because I did this big, I promise this will get to the answer. I did this big survey this year about how people listen to music. I read these surveys all the time. I've been for a long time who labels hire to read data to them and give them a TLDR so they don't have to read data. And one of the things I saw is still to this day, word of mouth is the biggest way people adopt things. And we see it in data all the time. So my thing is this. Everyone who went viral in music last year, I can say without a doubt, you show me any of them, they message how the dumbest person you've ever met tells the other dumbest person you've ever met what makes them different. And what I try to do is that exact same thing in everything I do. It's the same reason I talk on a green screen with a weird vaporwave weatherman look on my YouTube is I don't want to look like the other people. I want you to go, there's the guy with the blue microphone, the weird voice in front of the green screen.
Yeah. Yeah. Your look, you even talk about this in your videos is like you use yourself as an example in the branding world, right? And how to brand yourself and how to stick out. And I think, it's a great point. Like, excuse me. Obviously there's, people want to try to copy success. The market's so saturated in music and in everything these days, honestly. But that creates opportunity to be unique, to be creative, right? To stand out. You're using a red background. I have my cool, bright in background here. We're contrasting each other. I love it. So that's a great point. Thank you for that. What is the record on your wall in the back there?
That is Senses Fail, Let It Enfold You, which was a record that we scrappily made despite the fact that the band was on a major label while making it, though the major label did not end up releasing it. But yeah, we made that record in like people would laugh so hard that like a gold record is like vocals in bedrooms before anybody was doing that back when there were still good budgets. But yet again, the group really had insane organic enthusiasm. They were one of those rare groups where they came up from a freeform radio station playing them a lot and people would just call and request it so much. They really blew up it. And sorry to go in that direction. It was distracting me. I wanted to know what it was, but the word of mouth thing I think is really important. And you and I think maybe talked about this on the phone during our little get to know each other chat. But Led Zeppelin, the movie that just came out, the documentary, I saw that. They grew via word of mouth in the 1960s. The press hated them. Their concerts were blowing up. Radio play was fueling things as well.
And then, you know, fans would find out, hearing their full album, they'd find out their Led Zeppelin was in town that night, and go try to see them. No tickets available. So, you know, we think about that, and then we have like tools like social media as word of mouth to spread that information, to spread, you know, a band, their sound, things like that. What I guess parallels can you draw between when you were coming up in the 90s and the aughts and the, you know, to where we are today? Like what's changed, what stayed the same, you know, what learnings have you taken from then that you're applying now with your guidance and the bands you're working with?
I mean, I think the most interesting thing, you know, 2 nights ago, I was out with a lot of people who in the music came up in the same world, even though we didn't all come up together, but we were all like still doing very big things. One was like the label manager of the biggest independent label. One was in a multi-platinum selling punk band. Another is like the top guy who, like, when somebody's like, we're going independent, he is at the distributor, does this. And what we all really see that we learned in our punk rock DIY pedigree is a lot of people go, okay, who do we hire to do this? And we're more like, how do we do this as scrappy and low budget to enable the thing that's going to go the farthest and the most effective? So what do I mean by that? A lot of the time, it'll be the thing of like, you know, for a record like What's in Back of Me, it's like, okay, they have not given us a budget enough to do this record right in a studio. We would have rushed it. It would not have come out well. It would not have been on TRL and gotten all the attention if we didn't really produce it well. So back when no one was making records in houses in 2003, it's like, okay, well, I bought a good enough rig to do this. We can do this way, and we'll get this done. I'll do drum edits and pitch correction and vocal correction on a second computer while they're working in the other room. And like, you find a way to get things done scrappy and well. And one of the things I get on a lot of calls is like, well, who can I pay to do all this for me? And I'm like, look, like, the thing I have to tell you is almost everybody I see who's going viral, whose short form is working well, which is the thing that's most likely to take you from 0 fans to hundreds of thousands these days, is doing it themselves and learning how to use the tools. And the tools have never been cheaper. They've never been easier to use. You know, back when I was younger, you got to remember, you could do drum edits on like a 4-minute song that's played decently now in like 30 minutes if you're really fast and good at it. Back then, the fades would take 30 minutes to just process. Like, it was terrible. And it's really, I say all this in that the same philosophy still exists, that figuring out a plan of how to use your exploits, and for people who don't know what an exploit is the things that resources you have that somebody else may not have that you can use to get an unfair advantage. And figuring out what those are sometimes is just your uncle owns a warehouse. Well, you can do music videos there all the time. You can hang up a giant green screen, which if you sew them together because your sister is a great sewer and you make this giant green screen, well, you can have one of those not volume walls, those continuous walls, because there's all this warehouse space. Maybe that's how you exploit things to make cool content. Figure out what your assets are and do it. And that's what I think has made a lot of people throughout all the years I've done this really successful.
Yeah. God, I've talked about this so much, and like, you know, again, I hang out on Reddit a lot. I don't know if you do, but you know, these people, you know,
my wife calls me the terrorist of the local Reddit boards.
We've probably interacted there before and not even known it. Yeah, these, you know, people in these like music industry forums or whatever it is, it's like, how do I'm a singer, but like, I don't have money to get a producer. I'm like, just learn how to do it. It's going to be a process, but like the more self-sufficient you can be. I don't know if you're a Burning Man guy at all, but like, you know, one of the biggest principles in Burning Man culture is radical self-reliance. Like, they preach that, right? Like, show up to the desert, expect the worst to happen, plan for the worst, hope for the best. if you can be as self-reliant as possible, if you can learn how to do graphic design in some basic way, like you said, the tools are easy, they're cheap. There's the Canvas of the world. It's vastly important. But I think that has also created this situation that we're in where everybody is an artist now, right? Everybody's a beat maker because the tools are so accessible. I traded in my drumsticks for like DJ equipment 15 years ago, and everybody's a DJ now, right? Because the cost has come down on the equipment, the ease of use has the barrier to entry has been lowered. So now everyone can literally just hit play on a song, twist some knobs, mix in the next thing, and everyone's a DJ now. So I think it's a contrast where it's like, yes, these tools are available and they're free or cheap and everybody can do it, which has created that saturated market and then thus creates the downstream opportunity to figure out how to make yourself unique. So pros and cons, I'd say with the state of things right now. Would you agree? Or
I'm with Jack Conte of most people know him as the Patreon CEO. That there's never been a better time to be a creator, but my caveat is you will not be compensated as well than any other time. I tend to think saturation exists, but people think of it in a very overblown way, which is that I think it's almost every genre has always been saturated. You could argue at the dawn of some genres they weren't saturated yet, but there also usually wasn't that much demand at the start of genre. I listen to a lot of hyperpop, for example, and I was looking back at a timeline of like, okay, when did the hyperpop playlist exist? When did this record come out? And I'm like, okay, in the 3 years before 100 Gex came and really popularized this genre, it's like you could say it wasn't saturated at all. But also, no one was listening to it. And there was no real audience. And the audience, I'd say, is 10 times bigger now. And, is the amount of people creating it 10 times bigger? I don't know. But, like, what I will tell you now is that we really don't see a big audience for a lot of genres is that I can put this better. EDM, you could argue to me, is a very, very saturated audience. But if you try to make and argue it to me that Future Garage is saturated, I will laugh my ass off at you, because what I would argue is there's much more people who are into that than people creating it right now can give them. And it's the same reason, if you're familiar with the artist Artemis, is that Artemis got very, very popular off of taking the biggest artist in the world, who's The Weeknd. Many people don't realize that he is, for the last 5 years, most of the time, he has been the number one artist. He's currently not. Bruno Mars is.
In how do you define number one?
All of music streaming, if you combine all platforms, according to Chartmetric, The Weeknd is number one.
Got it.
So mass consumption worldwide of all platforms. Artemis took the Weeknd sound, marketed at people basically just going, I know you want more Weeknd songs. Here's even hornier Weeknd songs. How do you like that? And he got a huge exploit out of it. I'm not going to name names, but I was talking to someone who works with an artist that basically just takes the 1975 sound and makes mid versions of it. And he points out, all we have to do to make a very nice profit is release records about a year off cycle of the 1975. And the guy will take off his shirt. He looks great. And they'll do just fine. You're never going to do amazing, but great ideas and exceptional things often do amazing. But I tend to think saturation is very overdone because most people aren't feeding the demand for the things that are saturated.
It's a great point. Yeah, I like the Speed Garage example, or Future Garage.
Like Future UK Garage. Future, which I listen to a lot of that when I'm like working. Yeah.
Let me tell you, moving to Denver, that stuff's all around me more than it's ever been. Like leaving LA, which was a big house scene, coming to Denver, Colorado, it's bass, it's variations of that. It's really interesting. That's a really interesting take, and you also brought up something moments ago that I wanted to ask you about in a way. I guess maybe you answered it, maybe you didn't. Um, besides the music itself, I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, like what is an artist? What's one thing if an artist had to focus on one thing outside of the music, what would it be? And you said, short form content. Is that your answer for that kind of question?
You're most likely to go from obscurity to some form of people knowing who you are from short form content today. Now, if there was one thing I was telling you to focus on, though, I'd go even further up the stream and earlier in the process, which is a technique I developed called the Lames analysis, which for a lot of people who are business mind, there's this thing called a SWOT analysis that brands do.
Yep.
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So I'd be sitting in major label meetings and all these meetings, and people would be using this, and the artists would be so pissed. Every time the word SWOT would be said, you could see their fucking brain turn off, and they were right. There's a lot of times I don't agree with musicians not wanting to be in the business because a SWOT analysis does not belong in art.
Sure.
It belongs as a technique for brands and businesses to see what they should be doing. So I created this thing called a Lames analysis that takes the authenticity of an artist and makes it so you can develop yourself so that you have a position, an identifiable thing, and so that every time you're thinking about what you should do, this is your compass of which way to go. You have 4 video treatments, look at the Lames analysis, and it'll tell you which one's the right one to choose. You have a decision about whether you should take this tour. The Lames analysis will guide you there. And so that's why I made this thing. So my number one thing is if we don't have that and we don't understand kind of what I went back to before of understand the competition, if we don't understand our community around us, we're going to just be walking around the park. It's going to be very hard walking around the dark without a candle. It's going to be very hard for you to replicate successes. But if you understand that stuff, you could replicate success on lots of different things. And that may not need to be short form content. If you understand the community and what your Lames analysis, it may be touring small towns and just living in a van. It sometimes is.
Sure. Can you very briefly explain your Lames analysis?
Yep. So I like to do the Lames in reverse order of how it's spelled. S is for strengths. What we're going to often do is we're going to be, let's say we're making a thing. Can we make it to show people the strength? E is for exploits. Like I said, that warehouse example, another exploit just may be that you're really fucking hot and get everybody horned up. That's
pretty face.
Often,
use it.
Yeah. Often a great exploit because you can get away with doing so much less interesting stuff than most people.
It's true.
Whereas if you need a whole lot of things to be attractive, perfectly tailored clothing, all this stuff, well, that costs money and takes effort. M is for misconceptions. So if you I give this trick to everybody. I was recently at NAMM, which for people who don't know is like the biggest musician meetup, and it's where a lot of people meet their favorite musicians.
Yep.
And somebody asked me a great question. They said, all right, my favorite artist is right in back of you. What do I say to them so they don't think I'm a dork? But we'll talk to me. I'm like, here's all you have to say to any famous artist if you want to get them talking to you forever. What do people think about you that's not true? Any artist with any success could write a fucking literal War and Peace power broker sized book about that subject. So what we're often doing in content and music videos, and once you realize this, you'll see this in your favorite music videos, is artists are often taking what people say about them they don't want to be thought of and correcting it in their music videos because they can control the narrative in it. They can control the narrative somewhat in an interview, but if they're talking to a smart interviewer, they may push back and get control of that narrative. You know, when John Mayer famously said those really racist things, the interviewer did not allow him to control the narrative. So then after that, we have A for aspirations. This is where you're heading. Does what you're being pitched align with you? If your aspiration is to be known as really smart and they're telling you to do a collaboration with Little Pump, you know not to do the collaboration with Little Pump. He's a fucking moron. And L is for lore. So what this is along the way, you have stories that have already happened to you in your life. You have other things that people know. How do we consider where this plays in with your strongest moments of lore? One of the things that I think people get very wrong is that they think that everything needs to be in line. When I tell people all the time is, you can contradict whatever you want because the contradictions create a bigger conversation.
Sure.
So, for example, the one I use a lot is part of Charlie XCX's lore has been that she's been this cool club girl. But then on the new record, the second to last song goes, finally in love, getting married. Maybe I should have a baby. And then the next song is just, I'm about to do so much cocaine. It's unbelievable. That's a big contradiction that created a big conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for walking me through your patented process there. Hopefully you didn't lose any money on giving that away. But
I mean, it's in a YouTube video on my channel. I've given it away plenty. So
I just wanted the audience to to be aware of it if they don't, you know, if they haven't seen it yet. Okay, so go through that process, analyze. Obviously, you're a big data and analysis guy, and that leads you down the road of everything you do. And actually, that kind of like led me into I was watching your video that you posted yesterday around the new Instagram. Coming back to Instagram in 2025. How do we win Instagram? And then you mentioned something in there around like the link in bio piece, which is important. And then you talk about something that I always talk about is data collection, email addresses, SMS. Oh, we'll talk about that in a few months. Like, how do you decide what you're actually going to talk about in these videos? Is it direct response to what you're talking about in your daily conversations? Is it people send you requests for help? Is it just analyzing market trends? And it's like, now there's been a change. I need to tell people about it. How do you go through that process?
Different times, different things. Right now I've been trying to kind of redo the base of my curriculum, where I think that there's so many loopholes. And what happens is a lot of the time is once the video turns 2 years old, everybody assumes it's out of date. But I'm like, some of the, for example, that Lames analysis video is 2 years old. I have like maybe 4 sentences to update it that I would be like, well, I would say this a little bit.
And then you change the title, I've noticed too. Like something that was posted in 2021, you update it for current day, which you just said hasn't changed much potentially.
Yes, and sometimes it really is not much different than what's happened. So what I'm doing now is I'm creating a baseline of a lot of my early content updated, but then what also happens along the way, like, so for example, I have this script. I always have about 10 scripts that are being written. Like the one, if I had my choice today, today I worked on some sponsored content for a brand. But if I had my choice, I'd be working on this video that's called "Everyone is Full of Shit and Everyone's a Fucking Liar." And what it's about is that fan accounts are now the dominant form of conversation of music on the internet. And most of them are made by the artist team or the major label. And they're creating totally huge lies. Your audience may not be familiar with this, but like a good example is Shabuzi actually paid a PR firm this year to create a lie that he is Dolly Parton's godson. And that is what we call a hyperstition in the business. A hyperstition that most people know was that JD Vance fucked a couch. And that was spread like wildfire on the internet. It is not true as much as I wanted it to be true. But what it is a hyperstition is a thing that everyone goes to believe that the person who started it knows will just spread like wildfire and it will keep people talking. And what most people know is that if people are talking about you, it's better than them not. It's why Kanye for years said crazy shit before he went mentally ill and then just said it because he is mentally ill now. And that's important.
Any press is good press.
Yep. Till you start doing what Kanye has done lately, and then it finally goes to hell.
Most press is good press.
Yeah. Yeah. all press is good press except for saying bad things about Beyonce and Jay-Z's children.
Yeah, and if you're a Nazi. Anyways, yeah. Okay. So that's okay. So you're writing scripts at all times, and if you had it your way. So, but then your decision making process around like what you're actually
I honestly, it's when one kind of grows up enough that it's time to do it. That's that when the seed is sprouted and I do it. I'm not in as analytical place right now, but with everything. But if you think of it this way, there's always a video that I know I need to have so people can understand the rest of my stuff. That's the priority. And then sometimes the priority becomes I just need to get this out of my head.
Sure. One thing you just brought up, which I actually wasn't even prepared to ask you about, but I think it's a good topic because it does come up in my world. The idea of like sponsorships and brand partnerships and things like that. And that's, I mean, for those who don't know me, I have a lot of experience in that world from when I was working the corporate 9 to 5. But even there's a crossover in music and everything, right? Like we all want to make some money somehow, right? And
Yep.
we all know that maybe music isn't always going to 100% be that cash cow for us. Other alternative streams of revenue. I have some artists that I work with. A lot of people come in saying, "Hey, I want a sync deal," or "Hey, I'd love to work with this brand or that brand." Um, I mean, you can certainly share how your partnerships came to be, or you could share your perspective around how does an artist go about getting it. And I have my answer, but you're a wizard, so I would love to hear your answer and maybe a tip around like, hey, if you're an artist who's really serious about getting a sync deal, a brand partnership, something other than the music itself, what are some strategies? What are some tactics to go about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the things I always start this with is that one of the most common questions you and I get is why on earth would an artist ever sign to a major label? And what I tell them all the time is, I used to have this podcast that Atlantic paid for me to do, which was I would show the DNA of Atlantic. It's called Landed. It still exists. If you look up Landed Podcast, Atlantic Records, Jesse Cannon. And if you listen to the episode with the person who does brand deals, you'll understand why people sign to major labels, because they can get you, even when you're a mid-tier artist, a fuck ton of money through brand deals because they have existing things. Brands in general want to buy in bulk. They don't want to deal with 90 different people. So a good example is one of my podcasts is on iHeartMedia. When iHeart sells an ad to us, they don't sell an ad to my podcast. They sell it to 20 podcasts they own that are just like us, that have the same demographic listeners as that. So that's the first thing I like to start off with, is that one of the biggest things you have against you is brands like to deal in bulk. But there are so many small aspiring brands that are not at that level yet. So the biggest thing I tell people right now, especially DJs, electronic people, businesses, there's almost no one you can talk to who says, I have too much business. And one of the best ways to get people in the door right now is a local business where you can DJ and get 20 people there, especially on a Saturday afternoon. Because now there's all this stuff, especially New York City, San Francisco right now.
The pop-ups.
Daytime pop-up DJs. I walk around my neighborhood, I live in the hippest neighborhood in Brooklyn. It's like there is a DJ playing at the fucking bagel shop while you're online. There is, and then on the Reddit is somebody going, why is there a huge line at the shitty bagel store? Those bagels suck. And
the
it's
music's
like,
good,
oh,
though.
yeah, they're like, oh, this person played there today and they did an acoustic set.
Yeah.
And so like one of the first things to just start with is getting a portfolio of like, look, I work very well with brands. And just like, can you DJ in the local clothing shop where somebody's trying to get that online and get visibility of their clothes? They are very grateful if 20 people come in and 2 people buy something. Then as well, you keep doing that. You have ways to tell people around town, I've been doing this. Also, they have pre-existing customers who may find out about you. It's worthy ROI for both of you. Secondly, after that is every single person who does any marketing and has done anything to grow their thing knows that Instagram collaborative posts are the greatest thing for marketing in the business.
Where's my air horn?
Yeah.
My soundboard. Yeah.
So getting to a new audience that has some sort of Venn diagram overlap with what they're trying to promote. So let's say you make either skate music or you make tech house, let's say. There is a lot of people who are into that who I'm sorry, make punk music or tech house, and you go to the local skateboarding company and say like, look, let's do a collaborative thing of some people skating to my music and do this, trying to get it to go viral. There's this like one group. I keep I keep telling the story and forgetting to look up what they're called, but like they basically did that into like getting 500,000 streams of just like
Mhm.
partnered with skate companies, because people who watch skate videos are all the same people on
Yep.
TikTok, and then they heard their song enough that it got to the right people.
It's brilliant. I mean, it's a hot topic for me too. I'm working on a pop-up event at a boba tea shop because I'm I'm big on Threads. I found a community here on Threads. Anyone listening, if you're not on Threads and you're trying to grow a community or get involved in the community, the algorithm's awesome.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I met somebody. They tagged me on a post. This boba tea shop was like, "Hey, we're trying to build community here in Denver," and blah blah blah. And somebody tagged me, and I'm like, "Hey, want to do a pop up show there?" And I went down, mother son, went down to meet them. It's a great space. They're open to the idea. Now I'm talking to some headlining acts potentially who've been doing these pop ups around the country, and they have data, like you mentioned, they have data on the venues, ice cream shops, coffee shops. These businesses have generated profit as a result of the events happening there, not just from the actual event itself, but from the downstream effect of the collaborative post, right? So this is marketing. This is marketing for the business. So cheers, that's a great tip. Thank you for that.
Oh, yeah.
Let me go back to my list here. Oh my God, I have so much stuff here and so little time to chat. I wanted to know, well, this was kind of related, I guess, but it was like outside of the music itself, what should an artist focus on to grow their career? And I know that goes back to kind of your analysis recommendation, like understand the community, understand the market. Do you have any additional thoughts on that? Like, or is it really just come down to like know the market, know your strengths, know what you can exploit?
So one of the things when I talk about this community stuff, uh, when you deeply, deeply research around you, you also get really inspired. So knowing what all the other small artists around you are doing, there's often little things that you're seeing that are not what I would call like industry wide things to do. So a good example of this I will use is, so let's say you're making hyperpop. Um, Hyperpop people are Discord addicts. If you're making classical music, they are not. So you start to learn all sorts of other ways that this like really can be exploited. Uh, and my thing is this: 10 to 15 hours of research of your community to start, and then an hour to a month is really a lot of what it is. But what that research also is things like, oh, everybody uses the same photographer for their press shots. Well, if I take photos with them, they're going to put me on their Instagram profile, and all their managers, producers, A&R are all going to see that my name and start to hear me. They're probably going to be my song playing in it. Then as well, you start to see cultural cues. Oh, it's funny. I noticed that all the artists are all doing this same funny trend about this same joke about a group. Maybe I should make a TikTok doing that same one, but I have an even funnier take on it. Things like that, noticing that stuff and understanding what's around you is like absolutely everything.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are like, no, I heard my favorite artist ignores this. First, you need to understand it to an extent, then you can ignore it. I ignore a lot of things around me after I've really learned it. But a funny thing that's bitten me in the ass is like recently, I started to ignore like one facet of a thing I was doing. I saw somebody lap me in like one of the things I was doing, and I'm like, oh, I got to get studied on this. I kind of ignored this side of like AI editing on this type of format.
It's a good tip.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, like if you had to tell the vast community, I know, like it's obvious you're not a like one size fits all type of person. There's no like, single formula to success, obviously, right? What would you tell the vast majority of people that you're seeing a lot of to stop doing right now? Like, what's not working either at all or anymore? Maybe it used to a few years ago.
You know, the biggest thing always is training people that you have to uncouple your brain, that the things that your favorite artists are doing are what you should imitate to market yourselves.
I love that.
You know, they're just playing a totally different game. A good example is teasers are the perfect example of this. It was like a big artist teasing, doing countdown clocks, making awareness before a song is out is great. When you have no fans, if you happen to get people's attention and don't send them to a full song that they can get addicted to, you've missed out on upping a relationship. So like teasing for 6 months, there's this one artist that like I am friendly with. They've been teasing like the same song 3-4 months. And it's like, sure, it's gotten some posts here and there, but if they had been converting people with those posts over to listening, they'd probably be on the viral 50 chart by now. And the big thing is like that gets you a lot more doors open than a moment. And the other thing is too is that people are like, oh well, I'll drop it when it reaches a critical mass. The amount of consulting calls I do on a regular basis where somebody gets on is like, so I got 8 million views on this one song, it wasn't out, and now I can't get 10,000 streams of the song because nothing I'm doing is hitting. I've done that call 40, 50 times in my life. It's a sad call to do, but its reality is that sometimes you found that moment and you can't get it back.
So to that point, right? Stop teasing, just tell people where they can go get it. I mean,
well, I don't think you even need to tell people where you go get it. Everybody knows now.
Okay. Just go listen to it. So I guess the obligatory, like, my song's out, go listen to it, or hey, I got this show coming up, come see me. Like, there's been a lot of chatter in the industry around that stuff. Like, stop like selling, stop like just telling people to go listen to your music. Do you agree with that? Do you have creative solutions?
It's different for the two things you outlined. So I do want to demarcate that.
Okay, sure.
So we don't need to do a call to action to listen to a song that's in a video. When people hear a song and they're like, yo, they go to YouTube or they go to Spotify and they look it up. Now, if your song's hook is I had a meet cute at the purge while I was murdering someone, and then the song is called My Decadent Life, you're fucked. They may scroll through one or two songs, but if it's not the most popular song on Spotify, you're fucked. You can do things to make it come up better in search on YouTube in the description. You can change the title to Meet Cute at the Purge. If you want, you create the Purge song after the song title. Things like that could happen. There's actually whole companies that do song SEO for viral moments now for when this happens. But what I'm basically saying here, you are gonna. Sorry, I lost a little bit of the thread of where I was going with this.
You're good.
Could you remind me where I was supposed to go with this?
Yeah. So the question.
Sorry, the difference between the shows.
Yeah.
You don't need to do a call to action of this song out now. People are smart enough to know a song that they're hearing that they can go look for and go to it. We've seen this behavior. They look for the songs they have. A show is a different story, that you have to do some things of like sneaking it. Now, if you could sneak it without selling it and like getting real cheeky. So a good example I do all the time is, I'm going to be in New York next week. I'm eating at 7th Street Burger, which is 3 blocks away from my show with these bands this week. And then you like do that thing, and then you like bring in your song, you bring in some convoluted story about a crazy date you had, whatever it is, and you do something that's viral to get people into it. That is necessary because people don't know this. Sure. People know a mechanism of the song. Now, I also will say out now is one of the most wasted things there is. What we see over and over again is that you could have way more success if you tell people. The thing we have to remember is music is a mood altering drug that makes people feel a way they'd rather feel. So if you tell them this is the saddest song you will ever heard, that's much better sell than Out Now, which doesn't say anything aside from, how many times you've been disappointed by Out Now? Prepare to have another one.
if you're already following the artist, they'll show up in your, in your algorithm anyways.
I mean, that's the other complicated thing with the algorithm now are you more likely to show up in strangers' feeds, or are you more likely to show up in just the people who follow you? And that sort of depends on what you're doing. Like, I look at artist analytics every day, and the ones that are doing best, they're 40% are people, 40 to 60% of their analytics are people who are not following them, and then the artists who are doing the worst are not getting out to anybody.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I meant an algorithm on Spotify or one of the streaming services, Release Radar, things like that. But yeah, that is a whole topic we could probably spend hours on itself. Is like, how, changes in algorithms. How do we reach a new audience? How do we still cater to our current audience and our fans? I even tried out the new feature on Instagram that's like the testing,
the trial reels.
The trial reels, yeah. And like, okay, so if it gets shown to people who don't follow you and there's not a lot of engagement or likes, like it would be really cool if it told you like what to change. Obviously it's not going to do that, but it's like, okay, this didn't do well, but should I still, maybe my fans who know me and like know the kind of content I put out, know my music, maybe it'll do well with them. Like, do you have any perspective or insight on that one specific feature on Instagram?
So the funny thing with trial reels is the data is still so messy, and I'm convinced it's because we're all tweaking it while they're tweaking it.
Sure.
And then you get messy data.
Yeah.
So I actually, in my Instagram guide I just put out, I was like, I'm not ready to weigh in on this. What I will say that I see a lot of people mess up with their experimentation is that you got to try something at least 4 times. If you believe the idea is good, you need to make it 4 different ways and see if you can keep improving on it. Because one of the things when I'm doing, every week on my members only feed on YouTube, what I do is I will, for example, scroll through an artist feed. And what I will see all the time is the artist has a good idea for a video. They do it. It does mid. But then they improve it and find a better way to do it. And then it goes really well. And then they do it again. And it goes even better. It may not have even been as good an idea, in my opinion, as the last one. And then the 4th one might be literal algorithmic jail type shit. Like, just flop out of nowhere. But sometimes they sustain it for a few videos. That group Good Neighbors, who was one of the most viral bands of last year, 100 million streams in 60 days, they were like getting away with like 8 times doing like the same type of format and just improving on it. Most artists I see, when they're like, you look through my thing and tell me what I'm doing wrong, is they try a format, and then when they don't get 3 million views on it, they move to the next video.
Yep.
And that's not how this works.
How does it work?
Well, it works by trying, testing, and also the mindset part of this is that you need to really get into the thought process of, how do I improve things? How do I look at other things, what other people do, and how do they improve things too? Like, one of the best things, there's this group I think who are the best rock group at TikTok right now, which is called South Arcade. I love their music. I got into them from TikTok. I had heard them on Spotify, not been as impressed that I heard another song through TikTok, got really in. But if you watch, South Arcade for well over a year is making videos of the same trope. And for people who don't know what trope is, it's like this is the style video I'm making, but I'm changing the language. I may be saying something slightly different, but I'm just playing around with it. They're always trying to improve on a general idea. They have some in their practice space. They have some that are just like, what if Avril Lavigne sang for Limp Bizkit or Korn, and just doing it around what song they have. Getting good at understanding what your tropes are, repeating them, and trying to get better at them. That's the main pattern I see between the virality, and yes, you just put it well. And also showing up 3 to 7 times a week on average.
Yeah,
on short form.
There's this one artist that just like popped up on my feed one day. There's a few artists recently, but there's this one girl, I'll shout her out, her name. She goes by OK Val, house techno kind of producer. And her videos, in my opinion, are so simple, but they crush. I don't know if she's doing anything
Mhm.
behind the scenes as far as like boosting or throwing ad dollars or whatever, but like it's a video of her like in the kitchen with some decks or with her computer, and it's a dope song. I mean, the production's great. And then it's just like the lights just start doing like a strobe light thing, and it's just like, yeah, and then that's the video. And like I see it all the time. Once I started following her, she's in my feed almost every day. And you know,
Mhm.
her Spotify stats support that she's doing the right things. I mean, she's got over 100,000 monthly listeners, and you know, some songs have millions of streams. So it's great. I know we're coming up against time. I do maybe want to rapid fire a few questions at you, if that's
Sure,
okay. Just,
sure.
you know,
Please.
common topics that come up. Um, this might be this might be a not a short answer, but is the industry rigged?
Oh, fuck.
I should have asked that at the beginning.
Okay. It is not rigged in the way people think it is. Every day I see artists go from nothing to something, and everybody be like, they're got a secret label behind them. I'm like, they don't, because they got on a consultation call with me, and trust me, they can't believe this is happening to them right now. They didn't call me to fake it out. I don't say them by name. It's not like I provide cover for these groups. I get those calls at least every other month of like, I've been watching your videos. We just went viral. What the fuck do we do now? And then I go through, I'm like, well, you don't even have a link in bios. You're retaining nothing. You know, you're not doing this. We would be doing even better
Yep.
if we did this. Do it all the time. So it's not rigged in that way. Now, as we get closer to the top, one of the reasons that a lot of time when people are offered these record deals is that in that meeting with the record company, they show you exactly what the unfair advantages are of the system, of the access they get. You know, a good example I always tell is like my last girlfriend before my wife's job was to wine and dine playlist people at thing. She worked at a distributor, and she would take out the people who did the playlist that she did, and it'd be like, it's time to buy them drinks, and then they're going to give me more placements, and they give me preferential treatment because I'm their friend. I go to and do fucking yoga classes with them. And is the system rigged in that way? Absolutely. Is it rigged in a way that you can't get up to that echelon and have choices? Absolutely not.
Boom. And that's great because that was tied into the like, can the small indie artists make it? And so that's great. Do you need a budget to be successful? If an artist has a limited budget, how would they spend it? I think those are related questions.
Okay, so the music part of this is a variable that's very interesting because there's so many artists who are self-sufficient who don't need to farm out, and I think you should always farm out whatever you can afford that you're not good at, that is not getting it to a point that you are at. What I mean by that is, like, for example, some people are very good producers, songwriters, but like mastering, they're like, my song is 4 dB quieter than every other playlist I'm on. And I'm like, that's because you need a mastering engineer. With that said, the majority of artists that I know, that I talk to, do not spend a dollar once their music is done on any marketing. They don't buy ads. They don't buy, crazy editorial budget things. They may do a photo shoot here and there where they pay somebody something, but most of the time they have what I have in back of me, which is just like a $200 Elgato Creed Screed, and then they have 2 gigantic Godox or Amaran lights with soft boxes on them, and they do their own content in their own space.
Beautiful. That should give a lot of confidence to a lot of people out there.
Oh yeah, and they're using iPhones a lot of the time.
Yeah, everyone thinks they need these giant budgets to be successful. Okay. I actually really want your opinion on this one, because this is one too where I think a lot of artists get stuck. They know they need to put out content. They know it's a powerful tool, but they just don't know what to do. They don't know. I spend hours brainstorming content ideas with artists.
Yeah, same.
If an artist is struggling to come up with good content ideas, I know there's no silver bullet here, but what's a surefire way to post something that will resonate? And I know You need to know your community, your audience, and things like that. But like, if you had to say one thing or a couple things, like, what should they do?
Okay, so the person I talk to the most every day has 4 million followers that engage with them every single day. The person I just literally interact with the most in my life, like who I have to talk to more than my wife because we're in business together. And one of the things I didn't say on here, I own New York City's biggest podcast studio where many of the biggest creators create at. We are in the heart of Times Square. We have a view of Times Square. So I get to be around these people every day. Her and many of these people have one thing in common. They are incredibly, incredibly good at first inspiring. Inspire is take in what's around and what's happening and then figuring out what is their slant on it, retaining that. So then they write down that idea and they kick it around for a second and then they put it out in the world very fast. So what that could be is, for example, everybody's talking about this week that South by Southwest is canceled. Not really. It's not. I should say this is going to be greatly diminished next year. If your brand is saying the reality, so you're Marissa from Mannequin Pussy, who's great at talking about industry things in a very authentic way, taking 2 minutes to collect your thoughts on what your experiences have been with this and give people a dose of reality is often a very viral moment. And I would say there's not many bands that are considered more cool, DIY, underground than Mannequin Pussy. And yet she's able to do that because it's authentic to her and her voice. Figuring out how you take the most interesting thoughts in your head, put it into like what I call an incubator, where you take it, you think how you could put this thing out in the world, and then you do it in the format that you do it best in, is how at a meta level I see most of the most viral people doing it, and who can do it every day for years on end. You know, my very good friend Torre, who I've have a great podcast series with, he does this every day on TikTok. He just kicks it around and then he figures out how to present it. And sometimes it's in newsletter form, sometimes it's in TikTok form, but he figures out where it goes and how to present it and then makes it interesting.
That's great advice. I think the challenge a lot of these artists face is like, they're artists, you know, they're like, they're in the studio, they're working on the music. They're not comfortable in front of a camera. They're definitely not, comfortable talking. So it's like, how do they build that on ramp? You know, how do they start getting comfortable? And my advice is like, just start where you are the most comfortable, and then it'll evolve. And that, the concept of cringe mountain, you start climbing it. It doesn't always have to be cringe content. That's another, I think, misconception of a lot of people.
Oh yeah, no, 100% out. For some of those people, the most interesting thing is what dance they're gonna do, or like there's people like Azaya, who I'm a huge fan of her music, but like Azaya is largely doing the same process I'm talking about, but she just goes, "Look how cool this guitar pedal sounds when I play this riff through it," and like that's the coolest thought she had of the day.
Yeah,
and her music nerddom has gotten the attention to her songs, because her songs, I'm like literally looking like it's the last thing I was playing before this interview, because she makes sick music.
Yeah, and that's that's what I say. A particular artist comes to mind who, in my opinion, is a really talented producer. I think that's one of his biggest strengths. And so I say, on these videos, you don't have to do much. I know it might feel awkward standing in front of the camera or showing your face, but like, your music is truly good enough to shine through, and your target audience is going to like it. So just do consistently get that stuff out there, and people will notice. Or an artist who has a really unique take on music, and we came up with an idea to just start doing covers of popular songs in his own voice. And, obviously that's been done before, but like, I think his unique take on it can really help get him back out there. So thank you for that.
The single most viral content is if you can find an emotion of a song that no one noticed and put your spin on it, where you find another emotion that was hiding in it. So, Nine Inch Nails Hurt is always the greatest example. Very big industrial song, very abrasive, and then Johnny Cash sings it with an acoustic guitar.
yeah.
Like it's like about the heartbreak of his life,
Yeah.
and it's considered literally the greatest cover song ever. If you look at any thread of people discussing it, everybody always says that's the greatest cover of all time, and that's what the formula is.
I can't do it.
I was gonna say that's pretty good, actually.
Yeah, well, I heard it on the radio enough times.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was somebody sent me a video of I forget his name, but it's this dude who just harmonizes, and he was harmonizing Soundgarden, and it was like the voice of an angel, and it was just somebody I think commented like, "Get this man a deal. Like, when is this guy going to blow up?" Or whatever it is. So I would like to end with just like give artists hope for the future, like, a positive spin on all this stuff. You've been insanely helpful, I believe, today for anyone who's listening, who's trying to get to that next step of their music career. You have an insane amount of wisdom. We could probably talk for hours, but we can't. Give artists some hope for the future, one tip to walk away with, and keep hustling out there in those streets.
One of the most interesting things I see that I really do believe in my heart of hearts is true, and that I think a lot of musicians don't believe because they don't get to see it, is that you're often changing 3 or 4 dumb things you're doing away from finding an audience that starts to appreciate you. One of the main things that I see happen with like some of the artists I do consultations with is like, we'll do a consultation and it's just like, why are you doing this, this, and this? This is not what you should be doing. And then they don't do anything. Then they finally fix it a month later. And all of a sudden, that algorithmic jail that they were in, where they're in 300 views, becomes 3,000. And then we unlock another like 1 or 2 dumb things they were doing. Like, one of the number one things I unlock all the time is if you have 1,000 email addresses, emailing at midnight that the new song is out right at midnight is usually the difference in tens of thousands of streams for most songs, as long as you didn't put out a total piece of trash. If it's a song that your audience receives well, we can often see a 5 to 10 point popularity score on Spotify just from that one practice, because it takes the people who are most enthused about you and then stimulates the algorithm the way it likes to see, which is people are like, hell yeah, I want to hear this new song. And those people are likely to repeat it. And then it sends it to more people immediately in the algorithm and creates a bigger splash. Small tweaks are often what is separating you from doing a lot better. And I see people who make those small tweaks and get past the like 3 to 5 dumb things they're doing, change their lives all the time.
And that's why people should call you for these consultations, because I think a lot of artists, especially if they're individuals and not in a band or a duo or whatever, they live in this silo. They live in this, their own little world that they don't know that what they're doing isn't great, or they don't know that they don't know what they don't know, essentially, right? So I think
my mentor, Alan Douches, has a saying that he's known for, which is, what are you pretending not to know? And I think oftentimes they know it, but there's this block that's not getting them to do it. And that block could be many things. And like, listen, right now, I know I should not have this black bag on the ground because I have a blonde dog who sheds like nothing you've seen before, but I'm pretending not to know it.
Yeah, that's great advice. Well, Jesse, thank you so much. I like to just do a quick smile at the camera so we can take a screenshot and make it look all pretty after. So 3, 2, 1. All right, cool, man. Well, thank you so much. This has been the Racket House podcast. Go look up all of Jesse's stuff. You may not have enough time in your day. There's a ton of amazing resources out there, and he's got a member-only community as well, and he's got a newsletter, and he's got podcasts, he got books, he got everything. Go check him out. Thank you so much, Jesse. Your time is so valuable, and I appreciate you.
John, appreciate the great questions, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Likewise, man. Take care and talk to you soon. Cheers.